All right, welcome to the Two Sons Podcast. Happy Thursday, everybody. I hope all of you guys are having a great week. We are going to be talking about Bad Batch, episode 5 or 6, whichever one with the Wookiee Jedi.
Gungi.
Yes, Gungi, which Luke has a theory that we just confirmed is legitimate. This time tomorrow, we will be probably driving through the Salt River Canyon.
Yeah, we're going to be
on our way up to New Mexico. We're driving all the way up through northern New Mexico, up through to Breckenridge for a couple of days of skiing. Myself, Luke, our wives, and one other couple that we're close friends with that's coming with us. Very excited to rip and shred down the Colorado mountains with you this week.
Hell yeah. It's going to be awesome. I got to get my left knee ready.
Yes, you do. Yes. We have this whole week is going to be insane. So tonight I'm going to Arizona, Oregon.
Right.
And then
that's a late game too.
Yeah, it's an 8:30 start. I'm planning on leaving at halftime because I also have to cover Warriors, Nuggets, and Clippers Bucks tonight.
Dude, are you serious?
Then on Sunday, I believe, I'm covering Saturday night's games. That's the one day I have to work while we're gone. Then this is where it gets crazy. So LeBron is projected to pass Kareem either on the 7th or the 9th of next week. Okay?
I see.
Most likely on the 7th. Against Oklahoma City. Then on the 8th is the annual volume party in Phoenix.
Jeez.
And guess what's on the 9th? The NBA trade deadline.
Oh my gosh.
And I have to do a couple of specific videos about this LeBron thing. So I'm excited to ski and I'm excited to go on vacation, but this next week is going to be that's going to be incredibly insane. It's kind of intimidating.
So do you have to bring your whole pod setup for the trip?
I have a Rode setup. It's basically just like a USB mic for my laptop, and then I just use the webcam.
Dude, we should film a pod.
Well, we can look at it. The thing that gets tricky is I've got to bring a lot more equipment there. But we'll figure it out. We'll
bring all of this.
Yes, yeah. We'll bring the guitars and just we'll stack them on top of the skis.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Work. How are you, man? Everything good?
Yeah, everything's good. Can't complain. Lola's back. As you guys can see, Rip is over here.
Yeah, we have two Pyrenees.
Yeah, great Pyrenees day at the Timp house.
You guys remember Lola from our shows back over at Luke's house?
Back when we just first started.
Yes, yeah, back in the original days. We've done we recorded them in 2s and 3s because we would do Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and all that stuff. So we've only recorded maybe 25, 30 times, but we've done almost 50 episodes. As a matter of fact, I think this is the 50th episode, which is
pretty cool.
Which is pretty cool. We've been going at it for a little while. So one of my biggest complaints with Bad Batch throughout the first couple of seasons has just been a lack of really deeply impactful storylines.
Right.
But one of the most interesting storylines in the Star Wars universe is what happens to the Wookiees.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of specific hints at it. So for instance, we know from the end of Revenge of the Sith after Order 66 that clearly when the clones started attacking Yoda that the Wookiees turned against the clones. Right. Because the clones basically start going around and they're like, all these Wookiees are dead, let's move on. And they're either hunting or they're capturing, they began their process of trying to subjugate the Wookiees at the end of that episode. We also know from Thrawn. Thrawn ends up in the first, I believe it's in the first book of the Thrawn series, the Empire series. He, in one of his random missions, encounters a ship that's full of Wookiee slaves. Right. And he has to confront the, basically the moral conundrums of his job. Right. And Eli Vanto's like, hey man, doesn't this make you feel uncomfortable? And Thrawn very analytically is like, yes, but this is not our job. Right. Is basically what he said. And we also find out in that the Wookiees were heavily involved in the Stardust Project. Right. Because we saw Wookiee food that was included in the shipments that were being sent to Stardust. Can you think of any other specific mentions of the Wookiee slave trade?
No. And for them to bring that in, you're like, this has Dave Filoni written all over it, right? You said that multiple times throughout that episode, and I could not agree more. Yeah, I could not agree more.
There's one more that I'm forgetting. So in Jedi Fallen Order, which is my favorite Star Wars video game, maybe my favorite video game ever, either that one or some of you video game fans out there, Breath of the Wild, the most recent Legend of Zelda game, is probably my favorite game ever. But anyway, tangent. in Jedi Fallen Order, you spend a good amount of time on Kashyyyk, and essentially the Empire has established full-blown facilities there. And one of the missions, the Wookiees are locked up in jail cells in those facilities, and you're in charge of rescuing them. But that's definitely like a clear storyline in Star Wars. But what was interesting about this episode, and we've seen this a couple times because we saw this in Andor. In Andor, the Empire was in the early phases of its existence, kind of like subcontracting out a lot of their enforcement, right? So we saw that I can't remember what it was called, but it was like the corporation. I can't remember what it was called, but where that group of weird, semi-military, contract workers was like in charge of that sector,
right?
And then ISB had to step in and basically take control.
Oh, right. Yeah,
this is very similar. Like, it's clear that there's clones that are working with a group of Trandoshans.
Right. That was kind of, and they were using separatist tanks.
Which for the record, early on in this, there's a lot of old Clone Wars equipment that's getting used, which makes sense. But like, the Trandoshans are kind of like a sloppy, more like savage version of like the Mandalorians. Like, from a cultural perspective, they are extremely
that's an interesting take.
Militaristic, but they're not like wearing Beskar armor or anything. They're kind of just like they're just like mindless killers.
Yeah, and there's like way less unity. They're all kind of in it for themselves. Like, how many Wookiee pelts can I get?
They're trying to kill each other.
Yeah, they're odd breed.
They're definitely they're weird lizard soldiers. But anyway, they're clearly being subcontracted by the Empire to essentially run the Wookiee slave trade.
Right. Well, it makes sense too because they're trackers, right?
Yeah.
And they're just totally
that's right. They're
into
trackers.
that shit. Like, they're
So you had mentioned the Wookiee we meet, Gunji.
Mm-hmm.
He So talk about the episode where he was originally.
So we get to meet him as a young Padawan, and we get to see him on his quest to get his Kyber crystal. Mm-hmm. on the planet of Elam, right?
Yeah, Elam or Elam. I'm not actually sure how it's pronounced.
Yeah, who knows how to say it?
Ilium?
Ilium?
Also known as Starkiller Base.
Yeah, future Starkiller Base. And the reason why I recognize him right off the bat is because he had that snaggletooth on the bottom.
Oh, really? So the snaggletooth was in that episode.
Snaggletooth, yeah, snaggletooth is there. Everything, all the cartoons kind of blend. I can't remember if it was. It had to have been Clone Wars. It couldn't have been Rebels. Yeah. But yeah, everything like blends. But I recognize the snaggletooth right off the bat. So
what's there's an episode 2 where in Clone Wars where they're dealing with a group of Trandoshans that's hunting them too. And I think it's young Jedi that are getting hunted.
Yeah.
It might even be Gunji in that episode if I remember
Who
correctly.
else is being hunted? Is Ahsoka being hunted?
It might be. I'll have to look that up. But there was an episode where we learn a lot about the Trandoshans and their culture, and it was in
It's an
Clone
odd
Wars.
culture.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
That's like one of those, because it was a series of, I think, either 2 or 3 episodes in a row. And that was one of those like cartoons where I was just like, like, this is like the more adult side of this versus like the little kid side. And obviously those ones are way more enjoyable just because we're not children, even though some people would say we are.
There's always like weird like little bits of violence in the Clone Wars episode. Well,
it's always like really intense.
Where they were stunning everybody, like stun gun, and it's like, oh, Wrecker just picked up a tank battery and just started blowing up clone troopers.
Well, yeah, and then I made the joke because the lead Trandoshan said, he's like 100 Wookiee pelts to whoever can get me the Jedi, right? And essentially a Wookiee pelt is like
dead Wookiee
skin, and then they're also like essentially hunting Bad Batch and Omega. And I told Jason, I'm like, okay, like what if they just switch the verbiage a little bit, and they're like, what if we what's it called when you take? What if we scalp?
Wookiee scalps.
No, or like human scalps.
Yeah.
like that just wouldn't fly. And it's just like essentially like those things are synonymous, but there's just certain lines you don't cross in cartoons, and human scalps are one of them.
Yes.
But Wookiee pelts
totally fine.
Well,
even like with the spiders, it's like they wrap up the lead Trandoshan. So yeah, essentially there are these spiders, and I when we saw the spider webs, I immediately thought of Jedi Fallen Order. I was like, oh, I wonder if we're going to see those big spiders that we saw in Jedi Fallen Order. And it's kind of like this weird, different spider that has like a longer neck. It's kind of like a dinosaur mixed with a spider type of vibe, or like a mantis kind of. And
it is mantis-like.
Yeah, mantis spiders. And so the lead Trandoshan is like gets in this like fire circle with the spiders and with Gungi, and Gungi turns off his lightsaber and chills. And essentially, that he mentions earlier in the episode, like if you don't pose a threat to them, they will not attack you.
Right.
But then, of course, the Trandoshan like is like
ready
trying to fight
go.
them,
and he punches one of them in the head.
Yes, and then next thing you know, he's wrapped in silk and being dragged up in the trees. And it's like you have to remember that is that's actually like a pretty strong indicator that they're like, yeah, these spiders are going to like suck his guts out.
Yeah,
like they're going to insert acid into his belly, wait for his guts to liquefy, and then drink it like a straw.
Let it cook. So one thing that I want to know, and hopefully one of our fans or viewers can tell us, but if you guys know what the Wookiees were drinking, what Wrecker was all stoked about, please let us know. Because Jason and I were trying to figure out, it's like, is that just like a soup? Is that like a Wookiees like soup?
It's tree brew. It's tree booze, bro.
Or is it tree brews?
Tree booze.
Lose tree brews.
Before we go on, I forgot. I have a present for you. So we didn't talk about this. We didn't talk about this last week, but Mr. Luke here just turned 30. He's officially a member of the 30 Club.
30 and thriving.
I got this for you in
dude.
North Star. It's cool. Look at it. It's a North Face jacket. But
This
it's got
is
the actual,
awesome.
It's the
I'll show
official
everybody.
North Face or North Star logo.
Dude, thank you. Not sponsored by North Face.
We are not sponsored by North Face.
And Coors, again, if you'd like to sponsor, please.
Or Ping.
Yeah, Kirkland, if you'd like to sponsor. What
PRS?
else is here? Yeah, PRS.
I love some PRS guitars.
If you guys want to sponsor. Dude, this is awesome. Thank you.
No problem. I explicitly got black because you have a Great Pyrenees, so you know.
Yes. Dude, I spend 10 minutes, not even kidding, every single day lint rolling my scrubs, which are also black. Yeah, like, and then, dude, the other day I get to work and I'm like looking at my scrubs and I'm just full of Lola hair. And I'm like, and then one of the MAs like sees me like struggling, and she's like, "I've got a lint roller," and she like literally lint rollered my entire body because I was covered in Lola hair. So this is great. This will match.
Yeah, it'll be one of those things where you'll fight it just like I do with all my black hoodies, and you'll know where I'm coming from.
Yes,
now.
and then I'll just think of Lola.
Honestly, it was really cool, and they had two colors, and Carly got the other color, so I was kind of limited.
So
in my
I'm
options.
matching with your wife.
Well, I was no. You saw the one I sent you with her wearing that like mustard colored.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
so
the black was the only other color. they had,
dude.
So.
Thanks, buddy.
No problem, man.
I'm
Happy
excited.
birthday. Welcome to your 30s.
Thanks,
it's
man.
all downhill from here, man.
Dude, my knee will tell you that it already is ready to be on the downhill. So we're good. Watch, I'm going to show up in a cast next episode, and it's going to be my knee.
Oh. So, all right. So back to Star Wars. I have a theory.
Yep.
So, in the conflict after... So before the conflict, the Trandoshans are communicating with a couple of clone troopers.
Right.
And the clone troopers see lightsaber markings on the trees. And they go like, hey, we need to notify Imperial Command. There was a Jedi here.
Okay.
And then the Trandoshan was like, nope, you're not doing that.
Which is stupid. Why? You know.
And so now you had mentioned at some point during the episode, you're like, I wonder if this is going to be, I stopped petting Lola. It's time for me to pay the price. Hi.
So funny.
She was laying down. She was on the ground comfortable, and she's now making herself less comfortable so she can get like really like unenthusiastic pets. It's not like I'm over here like giving her a good pet. I'm kind of just like hitting her
just
like little random scratches.
Like touching her head.
But anyway, the clone troopers, I did not see them in the conflict. And even if we did see those two clone troopers in the conflict, it was two, and there's no way that the Empire just sent two clone troopers. So we can assume there's some sort of Imperial garrison there. So my question is, do we have a continuation of this episode next week, and is an Inquisitor involved?
That I think you're spot on correct. I think it'd be wild if they didn't use this opportunity to show an Inquisitor. And that's actually especially because they've been very Inquisitor heavy with a lot of their new content. By the way, the thing that you sent me with your guy Cal, and they're making a
Cal
book.
Kestis,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they're making a book about Cal. There's going to be an Inquisitor in that, I'm sure. So,
I feel like we need to read that because so a couple things.
We need to read it.
They pushed back Jedi Survivor to late April. Carly and I I've been putting it off for as long as humanly possible, but I'm going to buy a PS5 when that comes
Let's go
out.
Halvesies.
So no need. It's okay. Because I'm going to use it for other things too. Like I that's a big purchase for you to have to jump into just to play one game. But so here's the thing. I'm going to get a PS5. That game is an important part of Star Wars lore. It's a Jedi who literally survived Order 66, and it's canon and all those different things. That book takes place dead center between the two games. One day on our way to a camping trip, because Luke had played a little bit of Jedi Fallen Order, but not played the whole thing. On our way to a camping trip, we found a YouTube video that was like a 10-minute, basically cut up of all the cutscenes and like a narrator that was kind of explaining what was happening. And so you watch that, so you're familiar with the storyline.
Right.
Cal Kestis basically finds a holocron that has the location of all of the Force sensitives that are around the galaxy. He ends up destroying it. And also the Inquisitors that he fights, he kills both of them, and has a run-in with Darth Vader. It's very, very good storyline. But presumably there's been a lot of time that's passed, and there's like this, in the trailer, there's this weird white-haired character that he's got in a bacta tank. So there's a lot to get into.
Right.
And so I think that reading that book, in addition to just giving us another Star Wars content to dive into, it'll probably give us a better idea of the story when we get into that game.
For sure.
And then what we'll do is we'll have to either, I don't know how we'll cover the game in the show, but we'll find some way. Whether that's just we play it together and then we talk about it, or we wait till the very finish, or we just talk about the story. I'm not sure how we'll do it. We'll figure something out.
We'll figure it out.
But I would like the idea of the Bad Batch, because essentially Gunji's a kid.
Right.
Like he's a kid. And an Inquisitor is like a full-grown Jedi that has turned to the dark side.
Yeah.
And on an individual level, when
in most cases, right? In most cases,
okay, yeah. Most of them are converted Jedi.
I just wanted to beat anybody who is like any troll out there. Wait! Not all Inquisitors are Jedi.
You haven't heard about this guy from the comic number 17, blah blah blah.
Right.
Well, Luke and I have never read a Star Wars comic, and maybe we're missing out. And if there's one that we should read and cover on the show, you just gotta let us know. But the Inquisitors, turn to the dark side, has access to that high-end power. Right. It's going to be really difficult for Gunji to handle it. So I like the idea of seeing Gunji and the Bad Batch take down an Inquisitor. That sounds fun.
That would be a dope matchup.
I agree.
Man.
It's going to be cool. Yeah, and then eventually they'll get separated from Gunji, and then Gunji presumably dies, but we'll see.
Oh, poor Gunji.
Dude,
Gunji's so sweet.
Gunji's so sweet. There's an overall vibe again in this episode, where the Imperial tanks incinerate a Wookiee village.
Yeah.
And where my brain went when I saw that was like, and we've talked about this a lot on this show, but like they do such a good job in Star Wars of expressing why the galaxy revolted against the Empire.
I was about to go there too. And there's certain storylines that we've seen, right? So I think of like Lord of the Rings especially, and I think of Star Wars especially, where it's like true good versus true evil. Mm-hmm. And this last episode felt like this last episode felt true to Star Wars heritage. Like there's obvious good and obvious evil. Yes, it's messy, but that last episode was one of my favorite Bad Batch episodes of all time.
It was outstanding
just because it did have that old school essence of like, this is why the Empire sucks. Like they're just destroying everybody. Nobody can be comfortable in that galaxy when the Empire is there.
Can you think of any other little Easter eggs or things that stood out to you?
No,
that was Hot Shot crew.
Oh, you picked up the Bad Batch Hot Shot crew. For anybody who doesn't know what a Hot Shot crew is, I'm sure everyone
tell them about
does.
Arizona firefighting.
Yeah, so Arizona firefighting.
He's from Prescott.
So from Prescott. So. There was, a lot of people probably know, but there was a huge
what was the name of the
tragedy.
Movie? I can't remember.
I don't know what the name. I actually so
the group was called the Granite Mountain Hot Shots, right? If I remember correctly.
There's 19 Hot Shot crew members that actually died on a fire, a wildland fire, and actually one of them was one of my buddies.
Oh, really?
And they call them Hot Shots because they do crazy stuff. I mean, they're out in the wildland and they like dig huge trenches to stop fire lines, and Essentially, we saw a little bit of that in the Bad Batch. We saw Bad Batch hot shots, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's like firefighting through terrain modification.
It is,
essentially.
yeah. Well, and sometimes they actually even do like prescribed burns where they go and like they burn up areas before they can be engulfed, and they help prep areas for like the big slurry bombers. But yeah, Arizona and California and I'm sure like Colorado, I know. There's some other places too, but like the terrain here is crazy, and to fight fires in it is even more wild. And there's a lot of badass people who are out there, dedicating their lives like every single summer in order to do that. And even like the pilots, dude, like they're like 2-3 years ago, there's a huge fire on Mount Lemmon, which is the Catalina Mountains, which is like the huge mountain system that's to the north of Tucson. And like every single day, it was like a nonstop motion picture of crazy stuff happening on Mount Lemmon, because the fire lasted for weeks.
It was a big
right?
one. Mm-hmm.
And throughout the day, you'd see these bombers like skimming the side of the mountain, like full size planes dropping their slurry over these hot spots.
That was a wild thing that I learned, that those planes, I'm not sure if they were doing it for this specific fire, but like a lot of times they will fly down on a lake and like actually skim the surface of the lake with like kind of like a scoop that fills the water tank.
Yeah.
And like those pilots do a gnarly job.
Those pilots and then they fly into smoke. So like they have to know where the mountain is, so then they just don't fly through the smoke or right into the mountain. It's wild. So it was really cool that, like another example of really good Star Wars content, and them just taking the time to like do something special. Like they did not have to have like the hot shot scene in that. Like it would have been very easy for them to not like dig trenches like they did, but there's like, there's essentially a wildland fire. Like, how do you stop those? We dig trenches, and they had like Wookiees and the Bad Batch digging trenches. It was just a really cool touch.
Well, and Hunter was very like matter of fact about it. Like he's like, "Hey guys, gotta put the fire out." And like grabs a shovel and like tosses it to his buddy. It's time to go. Like it was very the way Filoni kind of like portrayed it was like it was kind of like an absolute necessary reaction to what was happening.
Right.
And that's the little thing that like Filoni has figured out that Star Wars has struggled with a little bit with Disney, at least with the main movies, is like people relate to authenticity and realism.
Yeah.
Like they would rather hear and see you describe something like Wookiees and clones doing what a hotshot crew would do than they would see 10,000 ships fly through a nebula.
Dude, you're exactly right.
Which does like and it's a whole thing. And that was another completely random tangent, but like that when I rewatched Rise of Skywalker a couple weeks ago, the nebula thing pisses me off, because it's like literally everything we know about the unknown regions is like using force sensitives to navigate around interstellar phenomena, not driving through a nebula. It just doesn't,
exactly.
Like, it doesn't make any sense that in a massive amount of space that there would be like some small like little nebula, and then you'd be like, all right, let me make sure that I fly through it. Like it's just weird. But it was, the reason why they did it is because the people in charge of the visuals or the storyboarding were like, how dope would it be if I could see like a TIE interceptor and an X-wing like doing like high intensity like close quarters flying through a nebula. It's just stupid.
It is stupid. And like, ask any person who's like in charge of visuals. It's like, hey, do you want to be in charge of people digging holes, or do you want to be in charge of people flying, spacecraft through nebula? It's like, of course you'd pick the second, but it's like, do we really want that though? Like, do Star Wars fans really want that? The answer is no. And what's interesting is, so last night, I was on Star Wars, like the actual Star Wars Instagram page, I saw this post, and this is just another example of the people in charge of Star Wars sometimes just missing the mark entirely. Mm-hmm. And for anybody who's still listening at this point, because we've gone on a few tangents, I'll break it down still. So on their Instagram page, there was this post that they had, and it was like Starlight Beacon like picture, and then it said lo-fi next to it. And I was like, Star Wars lo-fi? This sounds really cool. So then I clicked on the link, and then I went to YouTube, and then it starts playing. Like,
and this was produced by Star Wars.
This is Star Wars, yeah. So So then it starts playing like lo-fi music, and it was like really spacey. Like anybody who's seen Ad Astra can kind of like understand the music. It's like very synth. It's like there's almost like no. It's like it leaves like a feeling of like a hole inside of you, like when you like listen to it, and it's like very uncomfortable. Like lo-fi is supposed to be like relaxing, and kind of get you into like a vibe. Like it's like coffee shop music. Like sometimes I put on lo-fi in the morning just to kind of like oh, this is a nice relaxing morning. Like the sun's shining in, I can hear birds. Like it's cool. Like this was just like completely missed the mark, and it was just like, oh, spacey music with like space sounds and beeping, like that's Star Wars, right? And someone's like, yeah, that's Star Wars, like our fans will love that. And it's just like, no, it completely missed the mark. And then the reason why it missed the mark so bad is because like 2 videos down, I see this picture, and I think it wasn't Star Wars Explained, it was like Star Wars Theory, who put out the video, and it's like a cartoon of Grogu sitting on a table with Darth Vader, and Darth Vader's like working on something, and I click on that, and that was also Star Wars lo-fi, but it wasn't like Star Wars sponsored, and it was just so good, dude. It was so good. It was like it captured the essence of like what is like Star Wars music, whereas like the other one, who was actually even promoted by Star Wars, just completely missed the essence of Star Wars. And it's like time and time again we see Star Wars, getting the essence of Star Wars, where like dudes like Dave Filoni put out a great kick-ass like season 2 episode 6 of Bad Batch, and we're like, this is awesome. And then like right before it or right after it, it's like Star Wars putting out like crud lo-fi Star Wars music just because it has like a space shuttle sound, and they're like, this is Star Wars,
and
spacey.
It literally sounds like someone like was in a room and was like, hey, what's big right now? Lo-fi.
Yeah, lo-fi.
We need to find a way to make some content around this.
Crazy. I'll show you the comparison after this video.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one last example I wanted to use, and then we'll call it a day. Because about the nebula thing. So in Solo, if you remember, the Kessel Run is actually like a charted out gap in a nebula. That's real space.
Right.
And you travel it by making a series of jumps around these lanes, and they're cleared out. And if I remember correctly, like they almost look like tunnels in the movie. Yeah. And then what happens is like Han Solo is getting pursued by the Empire. And so he has to fly into the nebula.
He has to like poke out the side. Yeah.
And in the whole like whatever it was, 12 parsecs. I can't remember exactly what the number was, but the parsec is actually like a measure of distance. So him setting the record and for the Kessel Run was actually about him cutting corners by driving through the nebula. But it was so dangerous, he damn near got sucked in a black hole. Right. He got attacked by a creature. Like the point was like they were very clear about how like you want to avoid that at all costs. And the whole thing with the at its core, it's the pursuit of like the Solo thing made perfect sense to me, and like you're like, oh, this is why. Now when you see Han Solo say, well, it made the Kessel Run, and when you hear that now, it's like, okay, now I can visualize like why he did what he did, how he did what he did. It all authenticity and realism sells so much better than like wow factor when it comes to special effects.
You're 100% right. Having boundaries is what we're used to as human beings. So when there's no boundaries on things and it just becomes over the top and ridiculous, then we lose interest. Like, for example, if you have 50 Star Destroyers rise up out of an ice planet with huge guns that can all destroy a planet, when we know how big of a deal it is to be able to destroy a planet with a super weapon, dude, it's the same thing. It's like when you watch toddlers play, and when they make these like little games with themselves, and then they don't have rules, and the toddlers are constantly just like changing the rules, like, oh, like I can do this because of this and this and this, and like that part's not lobby because I'm wearing a blue shoe. It's just like, no, that doesn't make any sense. And then you lose interest in like watching stuff like that because it's just stupid and mindless. And like that's what Star Wars does sometimes. Not old Star Wars, but a lot of the new Star Wars. It's just mindless, So
and then they go to all the trouble to explain how they had to strip mine planets for kyber crystals and all this stuff to create one planet-killing weapon. Meanwhile, out in the unknown regions, at the same time, Palpatine's already began construction on a fleet of planet killing. Like it just is
so stupid.
Anyway,
Anyways,
we
that
can
was
go
a
on
huge
this for hours.
tangent.
Yes.
Bad Batch season 2, episode 6.
Yes.
We loved it.
All right, guys, that is all we have for today. We may or may not record while we're in Breckenridge. Probably not, but we'll see. And either way, we'll be back next week covering the next episode. And then only a couple weeks away we're like literally 4 weeks away from Mandalorian, man.
Yeah,
it's right around
I'm
the corner.
stoked.
All right, guys, as always, we appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.